I'm from the South African Human Rights Commission, and we are very, honored, and we really appreciate having you come and join us as part of this conversation. So this conversation comes as a second part of our conversation during this month. We are engaging on women, who are, taking up space, women who are trailblazers and who are contributing to our communities. We are looking at different topics. Yesterday, we engaged on how institutions have gendered natures, and we engaged in it. And today we will be engaging on how developing technologies can assist us when it comes to gender-based violence and femicide. So we are going to then just start by engaging and advising on house rules. Only the person who will be speaking should have the mic on. If you have questions, please raise your hand. There will be a slot provided. If you have questions that we can start during the conversation, please write them. Apologies. Please write them in the chat. Okay. So with that, we just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank our lovely panel, which we will introduce. And before I hand over to our host, Commissioner Makwetla, I just want to say, developing technologies are a supplement. We are not saying that they need to take the place of what the justice system does, what all the other systems do when it comes to gender-based violence and femicide. But because we are developing as a world, we're developing as countries. If we're talking about South Africa, we are saying that we need to use and capitalize on technology that is there. And we need to be cognizant when we develop particular technologies that no one is left behind, that the digital divides are taken into account and underserviced areas are taken into account, so that we can all benefit. And with that being said, I would like to then hand over to our commissioner. And before I hand over, I just want to give a short, description of who she is. She is one of our commissioners. She was appointed in 2017, and she is in charge of leading her portfolio in children's rights and in migration rights. She holds a lot of accolades in her stride. She's been a member of a board of trustees of the National Empowerment Fund, and she has been a chairperson, social and ethics committee. She has received multiple awards, including a much coveted ShopRite Checkers Woman of the Year award. And she describes herself as a social entrepreneur. She is dedicated to lifelong learning and ensuring upliftment of disadvantaged members of our community. In 2020, she also got affected acutely by COVID-19 and is still recovering from it. It has taken her a year and a half, but it shows the resilience she has. It shows how she wants to continue, and that we all recover wherever we are, depending, without depending on where we are in life, the class or any social status. And that is who Commissioner Makwetla is, and I'd like to hand over to her so that she can engage with us as we start with this conversation. I'd like to hand over to you, Commissioner, so you can set the context and the purpose for today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zukiswa, and good evening to all our guests. So happy to be with you. As introduced, my name is Angie Makwetla, and the topic of our discussion today is gender-based violence, which is very close to my heart. There is a high level of violence against women and in the country, which has become a scourge and a blight to our society. Everyone in the country has been implemented by GBV. I have a personal story of how GBV has affected myself and my family. South Africa is in its attempt to address the scourge, has adopted various laws, policies, and strategies. However, these have not been entirely successful because of challenges like lack of implementation of laws and regulations, fragmented approach, lack of resources, cultural norms and stigma, weak data collection, inadequate education, innovation like technology. Given the advancement of digital technology and our reliance on them to on daily activities, it is important that we use this tool to promote the campaign against gender-based violence, to prevent it and provide a safe environment for women and girls. There have been a number of technological tools in place being used across the world to educate the public on gender-based violence and its impacts, identify safe areas for women and girls, and collect data needed to implement solutions. This thing keep running away. South Africa, in its attempt to the UN Population Fund proposes guidelines that digital solution to GBV must consider, and I believe that we need to keep in mind today as we discuss innovative ways of addressing the gender-based violence. These are safety by design, purpose limitation, data minimization, proper and use of data, fairness, informed consent, accuracy, and data quality, security, and accountability. I'm happy that we are not merely focusing on the issue, but rather on innovative solutions that will ensure the implementation of the laws, the regulations, and strategies. I would like to thank you all, and as I said, you are welcome under the South African Human Rights umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Yes.
I think we all feel welcome. So I would like to now introduce our panelists, and I will start with Umamu Yvonne. I only have a few minutes, and I think looking at the bios, I would take the 10 minutes that we are afforded. So Umamu Yvonne is Imme Yvonne Hame. She is an orator. She does storytelling. Apologies. She is a storyteller and she describes herself as a beacon of unwavering dedication, a maestro of inspiration, a wordsmith extraordinaire. And I believe her. She has worked in various areas. She is a published author, an inspirational speaker. She's a revered teacher, and she has a great legacy in mentoring. She has had a lot of accolades, such as being having a place in the board of the United Way South Africa, and she has contributed in the Pan African Federation of Filmmakers. She has also the Peabody Award that she has served in has also served her with accolades, and so has the Tagalani Sesame team. She is one of our speakers, a great leader, and she is very passionate about issues, and especially during this Women's Month. Our next speaker is Uzama Ndungambegi. She is our provincial manager from Gauteng in the South African Human Rights Commission. She is an attorney and has practiced at Legal Resources Center and Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa. She is a doctoral candidate with the University of the Free State, and I would say the Gauteng Provincial Office is our most cosmopolitan province. And then we have Unomonde Bonagasiopa. I really hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. A former head of public policy in Southern Africa region at Meta, which we formerly know as Facebook, and has been part of a wider Africa public policy team. She has also been she was also served as a counselor at the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA as we know it, and possesses close to 30 years experience in the broader media sector. She has worked across a lot of television, radio shows, and print, including SABC, being a program manager, being in business development, funding, and partnership. She has also got a master's degree in ICT policy and regulation management. And she is also highly into ensuring that policy and the regulatory landscape in Africa is advanced. I think, she's someone I think we've known, and there will be a lot of contribution. We then also have Prof. Gopa from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree, and she has a higher diploma in honors in criminology. She's done a master's in criminology and her doctorate in education. Her research interests include cybercrime, school and gender-based violence, peace and security, illicit drug use. Her teaching interests include biological, psychological, and sociological pathways to criminal behavior and offending, youth criminality, and theories. When I went through her published, all her publications, it was quite a long list, and she is very involved in community work. We also have Leonora Tima. She is originally from the UK, but raised in Portugal. And she came to South Africa in 2005 to work at Khayelitsha. She spent 2 years living at Khayelitsha and saw firsthand, what happens, saw the devastation of poverty and the culture and resilience within Khayelitsha. With 15 years of working in the NPO sector, she became acutely aware that gender-based violence is a pandemic. And during the first COVID lockdown, her husband lost a family member to gender-based violence. She was 19 years and 19 months pregnant. And that's when Leonora started looking closer at services being offered to victims and what could be done. And because she worked in the app technology, she then created and founded an app which is called Ukwanele, which brings women justice, and she has won an award as well. So this is our group of panelists, and we are happy to have you here as part of the conversation. And now I would like to give each of our panelists, starting with Mama Yvonne, and then we'll move over to Unomwande to give us a minute on, what comes to mind, what your initial thoughts are when it comes to the topic. Thank you. Mama Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Zukiswa. And a big thank you to Sis Angie as well and the South African Human Rights Commission team, for bringing us together. I'm a believer of the power of storytelling. And having grown up in the township where we experienced violence as well, the human values and the faith that our parents instilled in us made us rise above all the challenges that we have. And this is a great opportunity for me to share my thoughts and the experience. Let me also say, I got so inspired about the initiative to use technology as a channel to inform, to inspire, and to educate. Because I believe that when we share stories of hope, when we inspire women and children who've been through hell, just reading the news that from April to June, about 40 women have been killed and 50 children. Let alone what happens every day to emotional violence, verbal violence, and all sorts of violence. So really, my big thought is that let us use IT to tell stories of hope and to collaborate, but most importantly, to engage the communities and understand where their pain comes from, where are the challenges, and why so. When we do that, we will not just go to people out there and say, here are the solutions, but we don't know what your problems are. So for me, engagement, communication, collaboration, and bringing multidisciplined, multi-talented voices to share their strength and their gifts will take us a long way.
Thank you very much, Mama Yvonne. Rwanda, please have your minute to share initial thoughts.
Thank you so very much, Zukiswa Molweni. Good evening, everyone. It is indeed a privilege to be on this platform, sharing a platform with women I greatly admire, Mama Angie, Mom Yvonne, and the prof that is with us this evening, and the fellow esteemed panelists. Obviously, the topic is on the role of developing technologies, but also being mindful of the fact of the current living conditions that we under where gender-based violence is concerned. My thoughts are we cannot even begin to talk about technologies without talking about the internet, which is an enabler that connects global citizens. And we know that the internet can be described as a global technical infrastructure, a resource that enriches people's lives and a force for good in society. And hence we have organizations such as the Internet Society Foundation, which was established recently in 2019, whose aims are to leverage the power of the internet to make a positive difference for people globally. The foundation's vision is to promote an internet for everyone, and they support projects that provide meaningful access to an open, globally connected, secure, and a trustworthy internet for all. And it is important to note a trustworthy internet for all. In today's interconnected world, it is important to note that 2.7 billion people remain off. The majority are in this continent. This therefore means that 1 in 3 people cannot benefit from the economic, educational, political, social, and health potential of being connected, and hence the drive and advocacy to improve digital equity, to ensure digital access, and thus bridge the digital divide or address digital inequities. Now, the United Nations defines the digital divide as a gap between people who have access to and use information technologies, including the internet connectivity, internet-enabled devices, and the digital literacy skills, which I think Mama Angie touched on earlier on in her opening address, and those who basically do not. Access to all three is crucial for communities to establish a strong, sustainable connection to the digital world. This is especially important as critical aspects of society like education, workforce development, and innovation move online. Internet connectivity is considered the foundation for participation in a digital society and a crucial element of digital human rights. And without a reliable, affordable, sustainable, and inclusive internet connection, people are systematically excluded from the benefits of the digital technologies, their participation in the digital society, and access to digital services. And when we come back, I will also be able to share with you what access looks like for us in South Africa, and what else should we be worrying about access to this internet, and also talk to highlights just levels of where we are when it comes to internet safety from a regulatory, policy, and a legislative framework. I will pause here for now. Thank you. Over to you, Zuki.
Thank you very much. I'd like to then go to Prof, and then I will ask Uzama to give us 1 minute, and Leonora. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zuki. And first of all, thank you for this invitation. I think this is such an important conversation. And for me to be a part of a team, such an esteemed, well-established team of women is really my singular honor. You know, when I think about gender-based violence and femicide, and I think about the most recent crime statistics, and we saw that the number of women and children who have been killed in the last quarter is still too high for any country, but it's too high for South Africa as well. And then it makes me wonder, we have a plethora of intervention, whether they strategies or technologies, and I wonder how effective are the strategies and interventions that we have put in place. Now, thinking about technology, we know that it serves as a powerful tool within a broader ecosystem of efforts to combat gender-based violence and femicide. However, I think what is very important to note is that if we want to leverage technology to mitigate against gender-based violence and femicide, we absolutely need a comprehensive approach. And this would, I think, include an approach that combines a variety of strategies, tools, and resources. Certainly, we cannot use technology in isolation, because if we do that, we won't be effective. And I think part of what we should do in terms of using technology, which of course, like I said, is a really powerful tool as part of the ecosystem, and it's a tool that resides in almost every household. I think what is important to do then is to partner technology with the social, cultural, and legislative strategies that we think through, that we would like to design. And I think the way in which we marry all of these various domains will become very critical in terms of how we start to address gender-based violence and femicide, and also to be able to monitor and track its effectiveness. I mean, one of the things I wonder, we have some of these tools that are already available, and I know Leonora was instrumental in one of them, Anele. I was just wondering when I was going through the information once more, I was wondering, do we have statistics that show us the effectiveness of these tools, for example? Do we use these tools to analyze data that comes through, via these applications? And if we're not doing that, then I think it's time that we started to mine the data that comes through, because technology then can help us to identify hotspots, can help us to identify whether the service providers or the services that we provide in a particular community or area is actually the kind of service that's relevant. So yes, once again, this is something that's really close to my heart. And as Zuki has mentioned, part of my publications deal with the issues of violence, gender-based violence, working with women, looking at resilience of women, etc. So I come with this exciting basket of having worked face-to-face with women and having collected and generated data that's empirical in nature. Of course, it's a drop in the ocean, but it's something that provides some kind of benchmark as well. So I'm going to stop there, Zaki.
Thank you very much, Prof. Zama, over to you.
Thank you. Mine is a short one, and I think one of the aspects already touched on was the issue of internet safety, but I think the point of discussion for me would be the internet or social media as a tool for documenting. And what we've seen in the last couple of years as social media and other platforms used as tools of uniting women, as said, with the different formation and movements that have been formed. But we've also seen the escalation of Twitter and other social media platforms being used as platforms to out perpetrators, where people have felt that the justice system as we know it has failed them, and how that has actually been used to mobilize community support outside of formal structures, like being supported at court. But what that has done is that it has meant that in some instances, people's cases have been reevaluated, but it also has meant that it has raised an awareness of some of the shortcomings in the justice system, but it is used as an awareness tool and as a means of women and survivors of GBV using the internet, social media as means of healing. So on that basis, thank you for having us. I'll just end there for now.
Thank you very much, Uzama. Leonora, I know you're joining us via the web. Please give us your 1 minute of your initial thoughts.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be a part of this discussion. So I think for me, some of the key issues potentially that, I mean, a lot of them have been mentioned already, but digital literacy is a huge one that we see very frequently. People often talk to me about AI and how it can harm people and how do we educate people around those harms, but you can't educate people on harms that they're not even aware of in the first place. And I think that's a huge problem. Before you even teach people about the harms, you have to teach people that the harms exist and how is their data being stolen and how is it being misused. And I think that is one of the core issues. And I think the other one is still that technology is still built by and for predominantly affluent white people. And I think that's a big issue because it doesn't speak to or speak the language of or address the issues of people that do not fit in this very specific demographic. And until that is changed and until data sets are built that represent a much broader scope of people, then the information found on the internet or the access and the assistance given to people cannot represent what their needs are because it's not there in the first place. And we need to change and challenge that. That's my 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Leonora. Thank you for your thoughts, your initial thoughts. And it has set quite a good, tone for the conversation. So we'll just dive in because I think we have so much to say and we have a couple of topics that we're going to have as subtopics. And then we hope we could have time. Please write your comments or questions in case we do not get time to then get to them later on and we can just infuse them. So I'd like to then just go to our panel discussion. So looking at and exploring the historical context and methods to eliminate gender-based violence. Let me give over to you, Mama Yvonne, to just give us your thoughts on the historical context and the methods that have been used to date. Mama Yvonne, could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, that's the first thing. So knowledge is power. So if we're going to use the IT to educate, to inspire, to heal, then we need to engage the grassroots properly so that they understand, and we can also expand access to that information and what we would like them to achieve. But having said that, my experience is that there are pockets of excellence. Things are being done. Having listened to each and every panel member and Sis Angie and yourself, the way forward for me is collaboration and integration. If we don't bring all those special, diverse skills together, then even worldwide, it won't be that impactful. And the fact that we still say over 30% of women worldwide are violently attacked at every minute, and there's more violence in homes, in domestic. So from my experience, I would say that advocacy and awareness needs to go with information and education. People need to understand. For example, do people even understand the scope of violence? How do I know that I'm being violated? Because people can be violated physically, it can be emotionally, and it can be just through abuse that is not visible. So if there is knowledge and full awareness of what constitutes violence. And people are empowered to be clear. If I'm aware that I'm being violated, where do I go? So what I've observed also worldwide and even in townships is that they are centers, but all centers that help people. I still remember an incident where someone called me 6 o'clock in the morning and said, I'm being abused and almost killed by my husband. Where do I go? I was so embarrassed because I actually did not know what advice to give. So I would say information, knowledge, educating people and supporting, and perhaps research. Let's find out what's working and what is not working so we can innovate and create new solutions. And of course, coming from story then and say, let those images and voices of hope come out, be heard, let our voices be heard. And I think it was mentioned earlier on, we will not go any far if we do not unite as women and if we don't take responsibility and accountability that we are the people we've been waiting for to bring the change and save ourselves from the scourge as well as our children, and together create a peaceful and a just world. And then, as I have said, let me conclude with what I have started, that from my experience, change over and above the awareness and the tools that we are using, it is also about listening and finding the needs from those that would like to serve. And with a clear agenda that with this technology, who do we want to talk to and why? And where do we want to get them? Yeah. So I'll just stop there because Mami Yvonne also can go on and on.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this. I thought this morning about one incident where you really think that you know gender-based violence and you're acutely aware of it. And when it happens, sometimes you are not certain because of the lack of concise knowledge that, you know, keeps coming up now with the amended Domestic Violence Act, which has a further definition. And so I do highly agree. And I think this is something we as a commission are going to be cognizant of and continue advocating. So thank you very much. Over to you, Noane. Could you please, then just follow engaging us on, as a tech developing person, how we can use technology that's developing as a tool to eliminate gender-based violence. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Suki. I think just taking us through to Web 3.0, as now it's commonly spoken about, I want to talk about access. And I just want to share that annually, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa publishes a report that is called the State of ICT Sector Report in South Africa. And according to the report that they published recently in March 2023, it indicates the following, that the proportion of households with access to internet anywhere is sitting at 77.5%. On the national level. And this percentage is mainly because at least one member of the household had access to the internet, and mainly through mobile devices. So these findings presented suggest that South Africans do somewhat have access to the internet, though there's still room for improvement when you have to factor in things such as the high cost of data. I'm sure we could have had more people participating in today's webinar, but because of issues of cost to communicate, they are not able to. Access to the actual devices, and the reliable power grid, just to name but a few, are some of the connectivity barriers. So yes, it would seem that South Africans are connected to the internet grid. However, we cannot be oblivious to the harms and safety risks that have been brought about by the technology, or they're enabled by social digital media platforms. And social media is a means of connecting people. I think that is what an advocate also indicated earlier on. It allows for peer-to-peer interactions, and social media tools use the internet to facilitate these conversations. And we are all aware that digital platforms have become increasingly influential in enabling information flow in the global public sphere, shaping what we see and how we all see the world. Further, as a society, we are dealing with the pervasive impact of technology and its unethical use. The explosion of misinformation, disinformation, the sharing online of harmful or prohibited content, child sexual abuse material, which is called thise, or child pornography, non-consensual sharing of intimate, explicit images, previously referred to as revenge porn, hate speech, cyber harassment, body shaming, online gender-based violence, the rise of generative artificial intelligence and synthetic media have become a norm, and they pose new challenges in applying to combat sexual abuse. These digitally enabled abusive, manipulative behaviors constitute infringements on the rights and freedoms of women, children, persons with disabilities, and the LGBTQI community. The question then becomes, how can we address the normative gaps between offline human rights principles and the needs and interests of online users? Following the recent statistics that were released by Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, as a collective, we are all alive to the fact that gender-based violence is a severe problem plaguing South African communities. Also, we are aware that gender-based violence predates the digital age. However, mass adoption of digital media technologies have amplified cases of online gender-based violence, which is a term that is used to refer to acts of violence committed against a person based on their gender or orientation using ICTs. And the effects of online gender-based violence are known to be there's several negative effects of online gender violence, which force women, children, persons with disabilities, and the LGBTQI community to retreat from digital spaces to avoid toxic spaces, which what these online digital spaces have become. And as such, these various forms of online harm infringe on the principles of the African Declaration on the Internet Rights and Freedoms, protection of marginalized groups and groups at risk, fostering security, stability, resilience of the internet, and privacy. And with regards to, I think this is something that I think the advocate and also I think the prof touched on with regards to policy regulation or legislative framework in South Africa. It is important to note that online gender-based violence has not received much attention compared to physical violence. Where policy and regulation or legislation are concerned, literature suggests that existing policy and the legislative frameworks have no specific provisions to address these emerging dark forms of participation. Currently, there exist outdated inception communications, cybersecurity, or cybercrimes and data protection laws, and there is little to no mention of intimate partner violence, stalking, and sexual harassment facilitated by the use of digital tools such as social media, and the threats of rape and gruesome deaths sadly often translate into real-world harm. As a result, victims of online gender-based violence have inadequate legal safeguards to hold perpetrators accountable for their venom online. And the lack of specific legislation and policy framework leaves those who are impacted at great risk. And it is important to note that gender-based violence occurs without proper follow-ups or reporting mechanism. This therefore means that online gender-based violence is generally rampant and there are no systematic interventions except for a few cases where legal instruments have been put in place. Therefore, there is a need for governments, online platform companies, law enforcement agencies to work as a collective in a collaborative and systematic manner in addressing online gender-based violence, and touching to the point that Mam Yvonne said, that it has to be a collaborative effort in terms of how we address and tackle gender-based violence, but in this case, online gender-based violence. Where governments are concerned, there are concerns that the amplification of harms and the lack of policy and regulation of social media platforms, there is a need to lobby for policy reform, and governments are being encouraged to adopt policy and legislative frameworks that specifically address online gender-based violence, online harms, and online crimes. There's also a need to strengthen existing legislation that might be used to fight online gender-based violence. And there should be capacity building on online gender-based violence among law enforcement agencies and judicial officers in order to empower them in dealing with online gender-based violence cases. And when it comes to internet intermediaries, we know that there are concerns that social media platforms lack accountability. They do not provide adequate support to victims and survivors. Also, there are a number of interventions that social media platforms can put in place. Firstly, I think one of the speakers spoke about the issues around awareness. Yes, there is a need to raise awareness around digital literacy and online safety. Also, there is a need to enhance awareness of community standards which are set by the very same platforms, and to provide user-friendly reporting mechanism. And also importantly, the taking down of content that violates human rights with immediacy and with local context and understanding. And in conclusion, I think I'll pause for now, and in my conclusion, I'll come back just to outline what the agencies or what interventions are being put in place by some of the agencies and what globally is being done to try and tackle online gender-based violence, and how to also, and mechanisms that are being put in place to try and hold online media platforms accountable in ensuring that there's safety when users utilize the platforms. Thanks, Zuki.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. And I think it is something I'm going to then throw maybe Uzama a bit into as a human rights specialist. Now, it's just coming up that there are a lot of risks that are coming with developing technology as well. So knowing also that there's a social media charter by the Commission and more, what could you say to that? You know, mitigating the risks while ensuring that developing technologies also have a place, as they really do provide a safe space, and they do provide, you know, assistance that is more speedy as well when it comes to accessing justice.
Thanks, Zuki. Like everything else, we always have to have a balance, and this balance is carried out in how we work as the Commission. But this balance, we are also informed by the courts in terms of the different decisions that have been made before. We always have to have a balance, and we must always be conscious of what the conduct is that we are doing and its potential consequences. As the previous speaker, Ms. Nomod, has just said, that the internet is one forever, but it is also a platform that once you say something, you don't necessarily have control as to who hears it and how they are going to respond. And we have to be conscious of the people who access the internet. We're talking about, with the statistics that were previously provided, we're not only talking about people who can consent, but we're also talking about minors, and also about internet controls that exist for minors who are accessing information. Now, as Ms. Nomonde also said, that when you do engage with some of these entities, Meta, etc., what you then find is that there's an ability, or sometimes even an inability, to really rein in once something has gone out. And once you contact Meta as the commission to say we've got a problem with post X, it's already gone out. And there's different examples in South Africa's history that we can draw from, where we can say that things went and they went viral. But this has also been sometimes to the advantage of the survivor, but also to the disadvantage. And we'll know a case where somebody had gone out and said person X had actually had raped me, and the same platform garnered both the traction of supporters and people who are saying cancel the perpetrator. But as Ms. Nomonde also said, that same platform also garnered the traction for hate speech. It garnered the traction for people who want to spew violence and the thoughts that they actually have about women, and about women accessing platforms, and about women using platforms to discuss their hurt. As I would, if I'm unhappy about my service at ShopRite, I would say, oh, I had bad service at ShopRite. But it's not going to garner as much traction as if I use the platform to say the justice system in South Africa has failed me, or is unable to adequately address my complaints. So it's very difficult, I think, for survivors to decide whether social media is an ally or not. And with those who've used it strategically as platforms of gathering of women, the Me Too movement and its equivalent in South Africa, we've seen how it has, it garnered all the protests that happened, and we were able to get even a lens on GBV in South Africa. I think a few years ago, we all then went and protested in Pretoria, and then we were able to gather, and then the president has done all of this policy work. But all of this was happening due to the internet, and these are the positives that come from the internet. But I think different organizations, for instance, the Women's Legal Center, are running a case on the naming of perpetrators, where people are using, survivors are using social media to say person X actually violated me. And the different infringement laws that come with that. But what it does is that I think it conscientizes us that the social media and the internet can be both an ally, but it can also be a tool that further infringes, as Ms. Nomonde said, on the rights of women. And I think it's more the latter in terms of what we've seen. And through even our engagements, not just only on GBV, but on racism and on hate speech perpetuated against the LGBTI community, people feel that because of the fact that they're on the internet, they are anonymous and we will never be able to find them. So that leaves them with some sense of impunity. So it's very important that when we discuss the internet, we speak both of the good, but also of its dangers.
Thank you very much for that. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about the bills that are, still bills, the hate crimes bill, the GBVF bill. There was just a hearing 2 months ago, and I am wondering if it will be comprehensive, if the legislative framework will be able to include all that needs to be included. But I think we are here and we can influence policy in our different various forms. And we had a stakeholder 2 months ago, and we're glad that we have a provincial representative from the SAPS joining us as well. And we said we would like to explore using WhatsApp with the new amendment to explore whether protection orders can be served, how we can use social media, how we can use technology to speedy the process. So these are developments that I think we can really push from our corners. I am very tempted to quickly then go to Leonora and then come to you, Prof. But I think let me come to you, Prof, and then come straight to you, Leonora, looking at the time, and then we can then proceed. Over to you, Prof.
So having listened to the various speakers and their feedback, Zuki, for me, I think there are two distinctions here. I think on the one hand, we have social media platforms that we use via the internet, and then we have the use of technology. And I think they are, they merge at some point, but they're also different. And I think when I think about technology in the use of mitigating against gender-based violence, I think about apps like the one that Leonora has, conceptualized. And I was wondering, what should those apps really be used for? Because I understand, yes, we know about the social media, we know about, online violence, etc. But now we are I'm thinking, should we not find ways in which we provide the support that women in distress, and women in distress for me would mean women who are in that abused situation and they need immediate help. For example, in the United States, we have 911, but of course it's a developed country, the infrastructure is different, etc. And I know Leonora mentioned earlier, do the apps that we have, does the technology that we currently have, do they speak to the people that need it most? Do they speak to the vulnerable? Do they speak to the language, even in terms of the language? Are they in the 11 official languages that we have in South Africa? If now we couldn't even, some of us forgot where the unmute button was. And I think that's a clear indication that we have millions of people out there who may have a cell phone, who may have access to the internet, but may not necessarily be able to navigate their way on the phone or using the various apps, etc. And I think that's where we should start with gender-based violence. And if we want to use technology, we want to leverage, we want to capitalize on technology, we've got to go out and do large-scale, whole-scale, comprehensive digital literacy or technological literacy. I'm going to stop there and allow Leonora her final comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Leonora will have quite an extensive conversation, and just take us through the app.
Thank you so much. So yes, we are currently piloting two digital programs. The one we're in the process of building and the other one we are currently piloting. The first one is a mobile application that specifically looks at the reporting of gender-based violence. So it's an anonymous platform. You don't need to put any personal details into it when you set it up, except for your cell phone number and a password. It's integrated with a panic button and an armed response, and then it live and audio streams for 2 minutes, which is stored to the cloud so that it can then be subpoenaed for court purposes in incidents of gender-based violence. It's also placed on a data-free platform and is free. And we try and use very simple language. The idea is that it will also be put in other languages. It's just we're still small and it's a funding related issue. But we're looking at this year still to put it in 3 of the South African languages. And then it also has a hidden vault in it where survivors can upload evidence related to gender-based violence. So they can put in case details if they want to, because we find a lot of people contact us because they're struggling to access justice within SAFs or the court system because of patriarchal systems and all of the things we're very familiar with. So they can notify us of any misuse of power within those systems, but they can also store data, either audiovisual or narrative data that is timestamped, geolocated, and we store it for them for 10 years because we find that a lot of people are not yet in a position that they want to open a case, but they want to start storing data. And then we are also currently building a chatbot that's using generative AI that is looking specifically at how to guide survivors through the justice system. And this is in multiple languages. And we're currently building data sets. I'm actually in Johannesburg at the moment because we did a workshop today with service providers. Yesterday, we did it with sex workers. Tomorrow, we're going to Alex. So we're looking really to engage with people to understand the language that they use when they ask for help. And the way in which they ask for help, cultural nuances, all of those kind of things. And then we train the bot to speak that language so that we can then integrate it in places like Facebook and WhatsApp, but also within our own app, so that people can access support when they need to. And instead of going to Facebook, and because we last year defended 3 cases of people that posted on Facebook following cases of rape, and they then tagged their perpetrators, and then they were served and taken to court. So we're trying to put our platforms where people are instead of expecting people to come to our platforms. And I think I just wanted to very quickly also touch on the fact that, you know, a lot of the legislations that we have are great, but the problem is that they don't reach the ground. Like, you know, so many times we go to the courts and we ask them to serve via social media or these things that are in place, but the courts aren't aware that that's even a thing often. And we get told by the clerks at the court, no, that's not actually real, when we all know that it actually is real. And I think that's the problem. It's all great to have great policies, but if the policies aren't implemented, the point in the policy is useless. And with the internet, the way that AI is growing so quickly, by the time we introduce new policy, it's already out of date. Because if you look at Facebook, what took 10 months to get 1 million followers, ChatGPT took 5 days. We are chasing our tails, and we need to do something about that, and we need to find a way to move faster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really hope that every person attending has heard the conversation and now has heard about this app. It is true. I really believe that, you know, the implementation is not necessarily there. And maybe a bit of homework we can do, as Leonora just said, that the legislation is there, but it's not getting to the ground. With the amended the Domestic Violence Amendment Act, it also states you can apply online for a protection order, and that each magistrate court, each court that is responsible should have an email address. So I will go to a court near me to see if that is the case. So if we could do that, that would be, you know, interesting to see and to gauge. Maybe I will put it, you know, to maybe our commissioner here will, you know, put it out there that this is something we need to look into. It could be part of our monitoring, as it was stated. There is legislation that is there. It is not necessarily implemented and getting to the ground. For me, as I will be passing and giving over to my provincial manager, Dr. Eileen Carter, I want to say this was very short. There was a lot of information. There's so much. And what stuck for me mostly is that we need to have the information and digital literacy. And no wonder you would be interested to know that we had a conversation with ICASA, with digital communications, about the lack of infrastructure when it comes to technology and to telecommunications. So now we're happy that there are apps that do not need such, so everyone can have access. And I hope there's something we all learned, and that we can, you know, move with what we've heard and tell others. I wish we had more time, and I just want to like acknowledge our SAPS provincial was here and a representative from the Uyinene Mkhoitano Foundation who have also joined us. And I just want to then say thank you for joining us and being part of this conversation. I think we can write a thesis from this 1 hour, and I hope we could engage more as there is more that needs to be unraveled. Thank you, and I'd like to hand over for summarizing to Dr. Carter.
Good evening, everyone, all of the guests, the esteemed panel. This is the topic that is extremely close to our heart here in the Eastern Cape, because we believe that we need to look at the proliferation of human rights abuses as is in a province, in a rural province such as the Eastern Cape. But we also need to look forward, because rural provinces such as ours is key in receiving infrastructure to allow us to participate in this digital economy and digital discourse that we are addressing here tonight. Now, the panel members, through you, Zuki, I was just nodding my head the whole time, because this is the conversations that we are having in the Human Rights Commission, and it is such a treat to hear that the conversations are being echoed elsewhere as well. Mom Yvonne, you indicated that collaboration and integration of matters are so important, but also that you mentioned that the voices of hope must also be heard. And that's the wonderful thing about technology and social media platforms as well, Mama Yvonne, because those platforms can be used to elevate and to amplify these voices of hope as well. Now, Nomonde, there's so many things that you said that echoes with what we are trying to do as the Human Rights Commission. The one thing, and I think we can join all of the connections here, is digital literacy, but also access to digital infrastructure. We need the infrastructure to get to the Lusikisikis. We need the infrastructure to be there, because not only do we need accessibility, but we need them to need the people in rural provinces to be online and share their data as well, because currently the models are being built on data that are not coming from us. It is not coming from South Africans, that we sharing what we need, our interests are, and what at the end of the day requires our voices to be heard. So digital infrastructure and digital literacy go hand in hand for us. And perhaps I can just put that forward as well. And we believe that it actually forms part and parcel of the right to basic education. We need to have this conversation that the right to basic education now includes digital literacy as well. Because at the end of the day, we're going to leave behind a whole cohort of children by the time they get to varsity or have an opportunity to further their studies or be employed. The knowledge that they have gained would be nullified and would be irrelevant in a digital economy that we are currently building towards. So that is for me, if we look at all of these issues, Prof. Gopal, you have been very clear about, differentiating between experiencing GBV online, or like we also refer to it as the, almost the evolution of GBV, and using technologies such as Leonora's app to assist the victims of GBV. So technologies, and Zama also made this reference, we are balancing the good of making use of technology and making technology assist the victims of GBV. But we are also looking at technology for proliferating online GBV. And how are we almost having this conversation into and feeding that into a regulatory framework that is so very much required, and then joining all of these dots into one concise framework that can be referenced and that can be serving as a tool for betterment, not only for the rights of women, but for the rights of all of us here in South Africa. And we, as the Human Rights Commission, do believe that we've got a massive role to play here, because we can amplify the voices, because we come from a baseline of human rights. We don't come from ethics. We don't come from, of course, it's included, but we don't just come from that. We come from a binding regulatory framework, and I'm going to say the Constitution in Chapter 2, and we are holding ourselves to account, and we are holding others to account to the Constitution, whether they are social media platforms, whether they are government departments not rolling out infrastructure quick enough, whether they are ministers not integrating these developing technologies into our curricula. So there is definitely, Zuki, I echo, next time we're going to have a full morning of this discussion. And even last night in speaking about the gendered natures of institutions, there's just not enough time. But I really appreciate the voices coming together here. And under the hosting of Commissioner Makwetla and facilitation of Zuki, I really hope that we can continue these discussions. But perhaps just from the Human Rights Commission side, looking forward, I think we need to amplify the availability of apps such as Kwanele. I think we need to amplify the availability of advocate or of mechanisms already there. Zama has also made mention of them. We have laws available that we can use, and we need to include those laws in the conversations and enable people to know, yes, you can serve a protection order online. Yes, you can make use of technologies to further your rights as well. Advocacy is required there. And as the Human Rights Commission, we surely take note of that. But then moving forward, two things, perhaps in the very short or in the very near future, we are in the starting phases of contextualizing this discussion about digital literacy, and we are going to invite the Minister of Basic Education as well as the Minister of Innovation, Communication and Technologies to the Eastern Cape. And we're going to join our commissioners to have this conversation about including digital literacy as part of a basic human rights to education. And we hope to then invite all of you around the table as well to this conversation, which will be taking place in September. But also then as a build-up, and Commissioner Makwetla will then perhaps at a later stage give more information about that. But there's going to be a conference that the Human Rights Commission is going to host on online safety for children. Children are being subjected to horrific things online, albeit disinformation, misinformation, harassment, cyberbullying. And as Zuki has mentioned before, we do have a social media charter that was launched March this year, but we want to popularize that, and we want to take it into giving tools to young kids who are inevitably accessing Facebook, TikTok, all of these platforms. And we need to educate them on how to use this better so that they, at the end of the day, do not fall victim to GBV online, and that they can use the tools to go towards the betterment when they go back home and assist perhaps their peers and their mothers and the victims to GBV in that respect as well. So that was 2 footnotes in going forward, but I do think this is the type of conversation we should not only ring fence for August and Women's Month. We need to have the voices around the table, and we need to have that frequently so, because we need to work towards integrating all of that we have in respect of tools such as Leonora's and Cornelia's, such as regulatory frameworks, such as social media platforms, as well as advocacy measures that we can enable so that we can speak this language together, a language, and Mama Khame, you've indicated, of collaboration. So I think from my side and from the Human Rights Commission side, the Eastern Cape office, thank you so much for joining this conversation. We need more time, but Zuki has done so well to get together an amazing panel, and we really thank you for that. And perhaps then, just as a parting shot, I'm going to hand over to Commissioner Angie Makwetla, and just to thank the panel and sign off this session, and perhaps invite you back to all our discussions that we will be leading in respect of technology and human rights realization. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Eileen, in thanking our speakers for having taken the time out of their busy schedule and spending it with us. They have a lot of effort that has gone into every speaker. So we will, and that we will call you back again, and we will give more time to every discussion. So thank you very much. Thank you.